more sophisticated in that arena.
One of the things I heard was earlier was what are the mechanisms that can bring bring the city and developers and retail and the people together. That seemed to be a missing element to it. And I think that goes into that process. Is you got to build a template of a good process like that has those things. So the charrette is, I think, a really good example to start off with. Really, the only thing that costs money at that point is finding the space to have that charrette really and the pens and the paper. But it's maybe that's where city, this may be just the Canadian in me, and I think one of the mottos and this is good governance is actually one of the things that is part of the motto of Canada. And I really mean that. And so it's having the leadership to step in and say, okay, what we need to have a BIA, a Business Improvement Association or district. Maybe what we should have for a certain area is a design review panel. We've done that in Toronto. We've taken 4 or 5 specific areas, city centers, in the metro region, and had a design review panel so that when a developer comes and says, this is what I want to build, it's not just rubber stamped, it's critiqued by peers. And so that panel gets changed every 2 years, I think, with another 6 or 7 members. And that really helps. It really challenges the developer to come up with something, better materials, better orientation, whether it be for transit or for pedestrians. And then there's these kind of citizen striking committees that you can have. And you can, because you really need that, especially with a changing demographic, so that you can represent those type of people. If it's older people, we're having a lot more older, baby boomers are getting older now, so those needs need to be considered. But then there's young people. Cities aren't designed for young people at all, but they're a major part of our city. So it's like, you're building a shopping mall, you're going to have skateboarders doing something somewhere. So why not just dedicate, 0.5% of your development budget to make an area so that they don't ruin your landscaping over there, but go over to that corner of the parking lot and build the ramps or the facilities that can actually do those type of things. So thinking about it in those type of ways. And then I also think from a city perspective, government perspective, having dedicated staff that's really, that looks after the area and that looks after those projects. I know it might sound silly, and I know you probably do have staff towards it, but in Toronto we have someone who's called the director of the public realm. They actually look after the public realm, the street furniture of the city, the benches and the bus shelters and design of those things. But they divvy out grants of only $1,500 or $3,000 for communities to do those things like the roundabouts or to do a little bit of a garden. But they also deal with large urban design projects as well. So it's having a template, I think. So when a development comes through, the process is already there, and you can jump on it, even if you have to close the deal really quickly. You can still have those charrettes and design review panels and so on.
Yeah, I think there are. I think these are actually both really powerful in one point. I think one of the things I want to build on is that personally, I don't see design as external to business interests. I think they're integrated. I think good design brings good business in the sense that, if we talk about how do you bring more traffic to a particular building, you actually want to identify where the hotspots are, where people are actually moving to actually build that kind of retail experiences, or in the sense that how do you actually think about a business model that is how do you use design to actually create some contingency for your business model, so that as your business model change, you don't have to do a wholesale renovation of the buildings or the built environment to actually adapt to those changes. So that goes to a kind of granularity that Matt was talking about small city designs. But on that note, we want to open it up to the audience, right? Yes. We have good communication here, both visual and so on that note, I think we will open it up to everyone, and if you guys have questions, please ask.
I appreciated your comments on how the built environment can be an obstacle and how conventional governance can also lead to some inertia. And then what I heard you say was it takes leadership, and you somewhat define what that leadership is. I would add to that courage in leadership, but given the notion of you speaking to leadership, I'm wondering if each of you could identify one leader in the governance area that you've seen be able to make that shift, to take momentum forward and stop the inertia. And what was the one attribute that you ascribed to them that got them to be successful?
I'll use Vancouver as an example. There's a city planner there. Vancouver is, I think, one of the only major North American cities without a highway going into the city, feeding into the city. It's a lot of main streets, a lot of arterial roads. And in the I think it was the early 70s, there was a plan to build a major freeway into the city, into the downtown core, and they built a couple of flyovers. Is that correct? In the downtown, but there was never actually used, so they just became arterial roads. And so you had this space below it that was unused now. They expropriated the land, and it just became a bit of a wasteland underneath it. And so there's this city planner, this former LSD head that's also a skateboarder, decided that, well, let's build a skate park underneath this overpass, these highways, because it traps the noise. There's not a lot of residential beside it, and what he did, he was really creative, and he forced the government the local government to change the zoning around there so that allow them to actually build something underneath this elevated, what would have been an off-ramp, and it's become the preeminent skateboard hotspot in Vancouver for kids in the suburbs and in the inner city and everywhere. And it's beautifully landscaped as well. Like if you're a landscape architect, you'll love it because of the variety of shrubs and the different types of trees that grow in shady areas. Like they took all that in consideration, and then they built these really nice cement walls and areas that look great from an urban design perspective, but they're just awesome for skateboarders. And it was thinking about not just cars and not just, it was thinking about youth and thinking about play and not just making sure kids go to the mall or they play baseball or whatever like that. It responded to a need that's actually vital to the city.
I think there are people who are really brave and creative, doing really great work in cities. Every city I've worked with has champions.